Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachaelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Hi friend, welcome back to this week's episode of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. I'm so glad to be back with you. I know that I've talked about this a little bit before, but I take some breaks around the holidays and around Micah's anniversary, which is February 5th. And this is actually the first episode that I'm recording in the year 2023. And so my heart is really with you right now as I've been praying about how to continue telling stories that provide hope and inspiration. And I am grateful to be here with you and here with our guest today. Friend, if the Hopecast blesses you, would you mind leaving a review for me on the platform that is your favorite listening space? That helps so much to press forward the stories of the Hopecast and the Hope Peddlers who are here, and that would mean a lot to me. So let me introduce to you my guest today. I am honored to bring you Jeanne Rodrigue. She has served for over 25 years in women's ministry, including speaking at women's events and serving as the former women's director at Bayside Church in Lincoln, California. With a Master of Arts in Pastoral Care to women from Western Seminary, Jeanne has a passion for helping women know Jesus and experience his love. She is currently the CEO for the Crystal Rodriguez Memorial Scholarship Fund, founded by her son after the death of his wife. She and her husband, Ruben, live in Citrus Heights, California. They are grateful for the blessings of their two sons, Kevin and Victor, daughters-in-law, Christy and Bailey, and grandson, Quinn. Jeanne, welcome to the Hopecast.
Thank you for having me, Rachael.
It is such an honor. I love that we get to share your story and just experience what God has done in your life after experiencing loss. And I know that our listeners are going to be benefited by that. So tell me, Jeanne, let's do a little intro with your story. Tell us about your daughter-in-law, Crystal, and kind of take us up to the space where she passed away.
Well, Crystal, she was raised by her grandma. So her parents were alive, but weren't involved in her life that much. And so she was looking for a parents. And so when she started dating Victor, we only have boys. So it was so refreshing to have a young lady in the house. And she was one of those people that when she walks into the room, the smile would just draw everyone in. She had such beautiful eyes, and she was always so positive and such a hard worker. She went to school full time and had several jobs, and she just became part of our family right away. Even though she had roommates, so many times I'd come home and she'd be sitting on the couch doing her homework. She always said we had better Wi-Fi, but it was just...
She probably just wanted to be with you.
But it was just so great just spending time with her. And we had our special place as far as where we had lunch. And my husband and her, he would call her Cutes. That was his nickname for her. And because he had unusual hours, his shift would change. There was many times I get a text. I was working at Bayside of, at that time, Granite Bay. And I'd get a text saying, yeah, Cutes and I are at Flippes, which is a Mexican place, or we're at Charlie's. And it's like they would have their little dates. So we were just thrilled. And 4 years later, they got engaged. I don't know who was more excited that they got engaged, Crystal or myself.
Oh.
Because she would be officially in our family. Wonderful wedding, so much fun. And they went off and spent some time. My son worked for Disneyland at the time and gave as a gift a day at Disney and went to Universal Studio. And then we had a timeshare that we traded into so they could go to the Bahamas. And lo and behold, the day before coming home, they decided to parasail together. And they were up about 80 feet, and there was a malfunction with the equipment. And they both fell and hit the water, and she died. And
Wow.
Victor, they weren't sure if he would survive. And so it was just so the pain. But
Mm.
what was amazing, Rachel, and you'll understand that the community, as far as our church community, our pastor found out like within an hour. It was absolutely amazing. People started showing up at our house. Our pastor called, and Ray had said, "We're getting tickets for you and your husband to go to the Bahamas." Friends came over, people putting money in my hand, saying you'll need some extra money. I had neighbors and friends as far as doing my wash, because of course, it wasn't wash day prior. So we need clothes to go. And so my neighbor across the street took, I think, the white clothes, and someone else did the dark clothes. It was such a, incredible time as far as the support.
Mm.
But we were in the Bahamas for 8 days, and then he was medevaced to the trauma center in Orlando Regional Memorial. He was there over 4 weeks there, and then medevaced to Sacramento, the Sutter Hospital. He was there for a few days and finally released.
Wow.
But it was such a hard time.
That is heartbreaking. Jeannie, I think there's something really sharp about a loss that happens around a wedding or around, new birth, right? Like there's something in the loss of a child with the high and then the really intense low. And this is something that you've been anticipating, and, you're celebratory and you're joyful and you're just like excited to have Crystal coming into your life. And would you kind of talk about sort of that, you're going to go on a roller coaster with grief, right? Like
Yes.
the emotions that come from the pain are going to take you everywhere. What was that like for you to get that news as you're thinking, they're there and they're having a wonderful time and we're so excited. We're looking forward to them coming back and opening the wedding gifts and, those kind of things that are coming next.
Well, and that's just it, Rachel. It was one of our happiest days. It was so much fun. And we had relatives from, New York and New Jersey, and she had relatives from Arizona and Southern California. We had, all these people in such a celebration. And then to hear that she died and he was in ICU, I remember having to call my husband. And I tried to sound calm. This is what happened. But then when it came to that she died, it was like I found myself saying, she died, she's dead, And I remember him saying, no.
Yeah.
It was, even to this day,
Yeah.
it chokes me up, because it's like, how can this be? How can this be? And I have to say, because we were gone for about 6 weeks, between being with Victor, being in the ICU. And part of it was I didn't grieve as much because I was so concerned for Victor. You don't want to fall apart in front of him. He's the one who lost his wife.
Right.
And he's the one who has 6 broken ribs and a lacerated spleen and has a chest tube in him and all these,
You're in survival. Yeah.
Exactly. And what's amazing, the news, it was a national news. We got calls from Good Morning America wanting to fly us when we were in Florida. They wanted to fly us up for an interview. It's like, no, we're not going anywhere.
Right.
The Daily News of New York's paper, we were getting and it's like, no, we don't want to talk to anyone. We just want to be with our sons. But we did give permission. They have so many friends. They had so many good friends. And they had called and said the Sacramento Bee was calling them. And we gave them permission. Yes, you could speak to the Sacramento Bee. That's, a local paper. And as it turns out, they put their wedding picture on the front page.
Wow.
And it's when we had a medevac from Bahamas to Florida, people don't really even realize the quality in the hospitals in the United States. We were in the Bahamas. Now, the nurses were wonderful, the doctors were, but they didn't have the equipment They didn't have the equipment that was needed. This is the ICU, and the bed was rusted, just rusted out. He had a chest tube, and it went into this jug,
Oh,
just,
wow. That's
and
incredible.
in the corner is one of these fly strips, a fly strip with. So finally,
Cleanliness might not have been at the top.
when they were giving him blood, I'm saying, well, obviously he's bleeding internally, but they didn't have the CAT scan. They didn't have that equipment or the MRI, so they were just going to wait and see. And I said to my husband, we're not waiting and seeing. We need to get off there. And so they had to find a hospital that would take him. He didn't have insurance. Young kids. Also, it had to be a trauma unit. And the reason we went to Florida was because a medevac to California was going to cost $75,000. Now, medevac to Florida was, as it turns out, $9,800. Now, not to say we had a spare $9,800. We had a credit card.
But 75,000 and 9,800.
Exactly. So what happened was, though, one of my friends who worked at Bayside in the finance department had come to see us. And she said, Jeannie, people are calling, wanting to donate money to help you with cost. So right before that, we were going to pay for the medevac. I remembered that. And so I called Kathy up and said, I don't know how much was donated. She said, well, how much is it? I said, well, it's $9,800. She says, we have it.
Mm.
The church took care of that. People donated to the church. But then when it was put on the front page, the Greater Sacramento dealership called the church and said, we want to help this young man. We don't want to just give money. We want to take care of something they need. And so they called us, what do you need? I said, eventually, when he's better, he needs to be medevac to California. And as it turns out, it's a long story, but a friend ran into an old friend who had a friend who did medevac in Florida. And so he quoted us $25,000. And do you know, they picked up the tab when it was time.
That's amazing. Thank you, Lord. I call those the silver linings. It's so hard to reconcile some of those things, when you're in so much pain and you see God providing for you in your pain. And I think our immediate thought is like, well, couldn't you just have saved her life, right? Yes. Instead of providing for the medevac, yes. Couldn't you just have kept the equipment from failing, right? We believe in an all-powerful God. And so when we experience trauma and hardship, it's like, well, why did you choose to say yes to the heartache and allowing this to come into my life? And then I'm also seeing your blessings in paying bills or providing for something or, bringing something through. I know I have those places in my story where I'm just like, God, you are obviously here. But why here and why not with Micah? Or why here and why not with Crystal or your son, right? In that moment while they're parasailing. And I know you're going to talk a little bit more about that later with the wrestling with the why God. That's a really big question that we ask in grief. But
it's interesting. When I first heard that she had died, and Victor, they weren't sure if he was going to survive. But I remember now, I know the Lord. I know his goodness. I know he's ever present. But at that moment, I remember thinking, where were you, God? Did you look away? Did you not see her fall? And yet I know he was right there. So it's that tension of knowing what he could do. He's all powerful, and yet he let this happen. And so you wrestle with that.
Yeah. I mean, there's such a tension there. And it definitely feels like, I think for a lot of people, they don't even have a foot in both canoes. They're just angry. Like, why didn't you intervene, right? But when we love the Lord, it's like, I'm choosing to love you and I'm choosing to believe that you are protector and provider. And yet, why? This feels dissonant, right? It feels like it's in conflict with each other. Will you talk a little bit about your son's grief and what that was like to watch him lose his wife so shortly after the wedding?
I tell you, it broke my heart. It just broke my heart because he just loved her so much. And there was at one point, in fact, there was a lot of fundraisers going on. Okay. And one of the things, because Victor and Crystal both were in softball, and we would go see, it was indoor softball. So that's a whole different ball game there, no pun intended. And so they had a community within there. Well, we never expected him to be in the hospital for so long, but things kept on happening. But they had set a fundraiser like 2 months out, expecting him to be there. And by that point, we could see Victor was falling into a depression. He was getting depressed. Here he is, he's lost his wife. He's in Florida. There's no friends. I mean, they were calling and stuff, but you start losing. And the doctors wanted him to sit up, get up. And he was just, it's like, he didn't want to do anything. But because of the fundraiser, their friends set it up. We had the laptop and they Skyped it. And all these friends, we could see him just perk up as they would come up and tell him how much they missed him and how much they missed Crystal. And so we were able to see all these people. And then we watch, it was a 2-day event. And he belonged to the Down and Dirty team. And they're very good. And then the Rough Riders, those two would always be, whenever there was a competition, 9 out of 10 times they would be against each other. And there was they were rivals. And so here it is. It's down to the last where they looked like the Rough Riders were going to win. And the scoring is so different, but the bases were loaded. There was a home run, and now they tied the game. But there was only one pitch left because you only get like 21 pitches per. And the only way they could win was if they hit a home run. And lo and behold, there it was, a home run. But what was incredible was you see all the team coming together. And what brought me to tears was all of a sudden, it was soft. You could hear it, Crystal, Crystal, Crystal. And it became louder and louder. It was just so, so moving.
That's powerful. Yeah, that brings tears to my eyes.
That just perked him up, that here his team won for Crystal, and to see all his friends. And it probably was a week or so later that finally he was able to be medevac to California.
My goodness.
But it's those powerful moments. It's moments like that.
So powerful. And I love that it was obviously so meaningful that, you remember it today, all these years later. And it's still, it's bringing tears to my eyes and tears to your eyes. That's such a wonderful show of love and support, and I think that really goes to show the power of community and how important that is when we are grieving, that the people surround us to make it possible. Because I can only imagine that your son was thinking, God, why didn't you take me with her? Why did you let me live? Like, if you're going to take her, and then he's got to lay in that hospital bed and, experience grief and feel a sense of powerlessness that is probably unmatched for him. And to see the people coming around him and help him walk through, because no one can take it, right? Like, everybody says, oh, I wish I could take this from you. But the truth is we all have to walk our own valley of the shadow of death. But there are people who can walk it with us, and that makes it gentler.
His friends, and they did special things for him. And even my son Kevin, the older one, knew Victor's favorite actor was Ryan Reynolds. And he actually got a hold of the agent of Ryan Reynolds and set it up that Ryan Reynolds called Victor.
How fun is that?
In the hospital. And he got a call from one of his favorite Oakland A's pitcher at the time. They would send him, he loves the Oakland A's, and friends would send, little goodie bags of his favorite, Oakland A's and his favorite candy, and they would send him movies. They were so good. So good.
I love that. That's really beautiful. So what did this look like? Obviously this was life or death for a long time if he was in the hospital for that long, and it just kept having new, things that were going wrong that he needed to continue to recover in the hospital. Like, we all know that, like, the hospital won't keep you, like, especially if you don't have insurance, they won't keep you. So if he needed to be in there for 4 weeks, we know that he was really on the verge of life and death, and you're in survival. And I tell people that at the time of the funeral, I'm curious, like, how did you have the funeral then, like, right away, or did you wait? Like,
we waited because we weren't sure when he would be up to it. And so we had set it for August 15th. Bayside of Granite Bay is a big church. It's a big church. The connections that they had, that it would be a big service. So we ended up, over 800 people came to her service. It was absolutely amazing. And women's ministry took care of all the food as far as the finger food. We had about 40 people come back to the house, and one of her part-time jobs was Tahoe Joe's. And they called us up and said, we would like to take care of the food for the people who come back to your house. And they sent everything from steak to chicken to mashed potatoes to dessert. I mean, it filled my whole dining room table with food to feed all these people who came back to the house. It was amazing in so many ways, and yet so sad.
The both and, yeah.
I remember coming in and seeing all these people and realizing I couldn't look at them. I couldn't, because I was afraid that if I started crying, I couldn't stop, And so, because I'd see these eyes, you could see tears in their eyes. And it's like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I need to just come in and sit down,
Yeah. There's so many feelings around loss, and just trying to get through it. But I was thinking, at the time of the funeral, you haven't really even begun to grieve. You're still in shock, and you have this, like, extended experience of, praying for the life of your son, and then grieving her and pushing all of this off. And you have a public loss, which is another complication of grief. And that's so many different kind of arms of the tree of pain, right? Where you're having to acknowledge each different vein that's branching off of this loss and the experience that you're having. What were some of your experiences kind of the long haul of grief?
Well, interesting. After my son moved out because there was too many memories in the house. We have pictures of them and everything, and just the memories of her always being there. And there was one night, my husband was working the night shift, 6 to 6. Victor was out of the house. It was 10 o'clock at night. Downstairs, the lights are out. It's never a good sign when you're sitting in the dark. And I was sitting there just, feeling sad. A big storm was going on outside. The wind is whipping and raining. And then all of a sudden, the wind just shook the front door. That it made me turn my head and look. And when I did, it just hit me so hard. She was never going to walk through those doors again. Now, even though I knew that, sometimes it just reminds you again. But it was so powerful. I remember starting to cry. Then I started sobbing. And then I was just bowled over, just this guttural cry coming out of my mouth. And I found myself saying, God, will I ever smile again?
Yeah.
Will I ever be happy? Will I ever have joy in my heart? Rachel, I no sooner finished saying that to God, and my phone vibrated. Now, I'm an extrovert. I had to find out who at 10 o'clock at night is texting me. And so the tears were just so full in my eyes and cupping them away so I could read. And it was from one of my coworkers, Kathy. And I'm reading, I've been praying for Victor all week long, but the Lord wants me to pray for you now.
Wow.
And I sat there and I said, God, you see me. I felt like he was saying, I see you. I see your pain.
He was.
That he would put me on someone's heart at that moment. Pray for her. It's things like that.
Yeah. Those moments that you just can't deny, his presence with you when it feels like everything is lost. And I remember asking that question too, because really traumatic loss, it's like if all of the emotions of the human experience are a circle, and if you have positive on one half and what we call negative on the other half, it's almost like the positive goes dark. Like we just stop experiencing the positive half of the circle of human experience, and you don't laugh and you don't smile, and it takes months. And I remember for me, it was about 18 months before I was like, wow, I authentically laughed. Like the kids and I were on a jet ski flipping it over in the lake in Branson, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually laughing for the first time in 18 months. I am legitimately, authentically laughing. And it was so refreshing and encouraging to know that I would be happy again, that it was possible, because it felt impossible.
Well, in fact, my husband always said I'm the eternal optimist. And I used to always, periodically, it would hit me and I would just say out loud, I love my life. I love my family. I love my friends. I love my job. I would just spontaneously say it. And not that things were perfect. You know what I'm saying? Job's never perfect. There's always fights here and there. But I loved my life and I so appreciated it. And it wasn't until I forget how long that it hit me. It would probably over a year that one day it hit me, I had stopped saying that. I didn't even realize I had stopped. And I forget how long it passed. I don't know if it was like in the second year or so. And one day, without even thinking, also I found words coming out saying, oh, I love my life. And I also struggled at that moment with a little guilt.
Yeah, like, are you allowed to laugh? Are you allowed to love your life?
Yes, exactly. That's the tension that you deal with.
I think we feel like if we're laughing or smiling, that we're somehow dishonoring the person that we lost. Like, oh, if I'm not sad, does that mean that I'm done grieving or that I love them? Or is it not really taking into account the full gravity of the loss that I've experienced in it? And we wrestle with that. But I just encourage people who are listening to you say that, like, it's okay to be where you are. Like, I call it the wheel of misfortune. And it was like every hour you spin the wheel and you get a new emotion. Like instead of money, for the Vanna White, like you get a new feeling, and it's just like, how many feelings can you feel in a day? And thankfully, after a period of time, some of those emotions start to be positive. And that's okay, because the heartache is not gone. Like you're going to spin that wheel again and get despair or heartache or longing or whatever thing that hurts. But if you are laughing in that moment, just embrace that and be grateful that you get to have that experience. Jeanne, I want to interview you for a second episode, but would you please tell us the name of your book and where people can connect with you to learn more?
Yes. So my book is When Hope Met Hopelessness, and it's on Amazon. And also, if I could I have a website also if they want to visit it, and it's JEANNE-RODRIGUEZ.com. And that has an array of information, not only about the books, but speaking about our nonprofit that is in Crystal's name. It has an array of information if they want to even know more.
That's great. So Jeanne-Rodriguez.com if you want to book her to speak or you want to find out more about what she does, and the nonprofit scholarship fund in the name of her daughter-in-law, which I'm looking forward to asking you more about on our next episode, Jeanne. Friends, thank you so much for connecting with us here today on the Hopecast. I'm so glad to have this experience together and to get to share Jeanne's story with you. And I know that the way that she has processed her loss is going to bring healing to other people and hope, because when you're in it, it feels like you're forever and you're wondering if you're ever going to feel joy again, like Jeanne said. So thank you so much for listening. And I encourage you to find us on part 2 with Jeanne Rodriguez. Friends, you can find me at rachelflick.com. I'm on all of the social media spaces, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere you want to find me, TikTok, actually, if you're brave enough to come into those shark-infested waters. It's actually quite fun. It's a little silly. And would you rate, review, and subscribe to the Hopecast and continue to share the episodes that bring you hope with others? Everybody, this has been the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachaelflick.com. While you are there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachaelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review. To follow Rachael on social media, simply click on the social media icons at the top of the page and you will be directed to those sites. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.